Vast numbers of young people break the law every weekend. Their drugs are illegal. Alcohol, their parents' drug, is not. But alcohol causes more deaths than all other drugs, yet health educators talk about safe levels of drinking, never about safe levels of drug taking. Now young people are doing what adults won't do, campaigning for safer drug taking.
"18 months ago, as the rave and ecstasy scene hit Scotland, Focal Point revealed the huge gulf between the attitudes of young people and those of officialdom. These young people didn't see themselves as junkies or criminals. They enjoyed themselves at the weekend and turned up for work on Monday. Nothing's changed since. The official attitude remains, say no to drugs. A group of young people, Crew 2000, have very different ideas. They go out and tell their friends which are the safest drugs to take, and if they must take the dangerous ones, how to minimise the risks. This week's Focal Point is a Crew 2000 report.
Right, I've got some rough draft copies of the leaflet. I'll just hand a couple out, just to see what you think, compare them to the Jelly Time ones.
We were in and around the club scene every week, watching people taking drugs and not really knowing what they were doing or what they were chucking down their necks, you know. So, I mean, that's a major reason why I joined.
Some members of the crew take drugs, some don't, some have, and basically some won't. It's as simple as that.
A lot of people do think we're all just jelly heads, but once we've proved to them that we're not, that we're stable human beings, you know, then they'll listen to us, hopefully.
The main thing we're interested in is putting information out to the people who are taking drugs. It's as simple as that. We recognise that not everybody that is using drugs has a major problem, but you know, the information still needs to be there to stop them getting into having a problem. And we're not trying to say to them, don't take drugs, it's a bad idea, because that kind of approach doesn't work.
We know how to speak to people our own age and get a message across. It's the sort of information young people listen to. They want to hear it in their own language, and we speak that language. None of the Crew 2000 members have had any training, any proper training or anything like that. It's from the street, and that's the way people want to hear things, you know, on a street level. You've got to tap into the culture. If you want to get a message across to people, you've got to know what they're thinking. Otherwise, it's no use.
That's the beauty about Crew 2000, is we don't need to spend all that time finding out about the culture, because it's all around us. As young people, we know what's going on.
On a Saturday, if you go into any record shop, any clothes shop, you'll watch people going into shops, picking up flyers for the next rave or whatever. So basically we have the leaflets next to the flyers, so they pick up a flyer, pick up a leaflet, and away they go and read it, you know.
Yeah, certainly, excellent. Have you gone well? You've gone really well, aye. Yeah. We've run out at the moment, like, so nice to get some more. Well, I think the clothes, the music, the whole club scene is just one big circle, you know. They all feed off each other. When the music changes, so does the fashion. If people are coming into me and say they're feeling down or they're on a come down or whatever, you know, I can relate to them. I know how to speak to them and approach them because I've been there myself. Nearly every youngster I know is doing some kind of drug. When I was younger, everybody was drinking. Now it's not like that. Everybody's smoking cannabis or doing whatever else. So it's a problem. I mean, it's a problem that's facing the government in the face, and why do they just want to turn a blind eye and say, no, this isn't happening here?
A lot of the older people sort of have got the total wrong end of the stick about the younger generation nowadays. Because, like, I think they think that we're mindless morons that are just, like, on the planet to take drugs, and that's not our aspect. We didn't take drugs every day. We only take them to obviously enjoy ourselves. It's just like a party thing where they take at the parties they have a good night and they disappear home.
How do you think their parents feel about it?
They probably don't agree with it, but I mean, 9 times out of 10, how many people's parents are that old that in the 60s and 70s, they did it all themselves anyway.
And do you think
It's just a repercussion of all before.
Do you think they know about it? Do you think they know that their kids are taking drugs?
Well, they probably do, but like some of them probably got good suspicions. I mean, when you're coming home 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, eyes like that, you're going to know that your kid's up to something, but they can't prove anything and there's not much they can do about it anyway.
So how many kids are up to something? We did our own survey. We asked over 160 young people between the ages of 16 and 25 about their drug taking, their knowledge of the drugs, and where they got their information from. 84% of those surveyed said they had taken at least one of these substances in the course of the previous month. Ecstasy had been used by more than half of those interviewed. 51% had used LSD. 58% had used amphetamines. 37% had used temazepam or jellies, a sleeping tablet that's used to help the come down after an ecstasy or acid trip. By far the most popular drug was marijuana, used by 88%. The results confirmed what we knew already, and a research project being done for the Lothian Social Work Department has come up with similar results.
What's becoming clear from the work that I've been doing is that there are quite a large number of young people involved. We were quite surprised by the range of pharmaceutical drugs, for example, temazepam and dihydrocodeine. These seem to have become an accepted part of recreational drugs use amongst some groups of young people. We did some interviews with some children in local authority children's homes, and again we were fairly surprised by the range of substances they were using. The age range of these children was from 14 to about 16.
Society's response to the problem is to get the police to deal with it.
There are obviously thousands and thousands of kids every weekend becoming involved in drugs. There's a really great acceptance of drugs these days. However, what we've got to say is it's totally illegal, absolutely illegal. Some of the drugs that they're doing are Class A drugs, which can land them up with very, very heavy prison sentences apart from anything else. And some of the drugs they're doing are going to do irreparable damage to their body. So it's illegal and very, very dangerous.
Would you say you've got the recreational drug issue under control?
No, not at all. Not at all.
So
I would maybe go back a wee bit for what you're saying. It's not just a police responsibility. It's not just me and my department or the police in general. It's the general public. They have the responsibility as well. And I would say the general public don't have it under control.
Last year, Lothian and Borders Police made more than 600 seizures of designer drugs, a significant increase from the previous year, but it's a drop in the ocean.
Everybody's aware of the fact that it is illegal, but it's commonplace. It's happening, all over the country, and it's so widespread now that it's just like going out for a drink. It's so easy to get drugs these days that you don't have to go up to this man in a raincoat and I've got some ecstasy tablets for you. You can get it, in your street, in your area. So it's not seen that you don't have to go along. It's not seen as being illegal because it's not the stereotyped drug dealer that you have to see.
How easy is it for you to get the drugs?
Very easy. If anybody's wanting any drugs, it's like they're there. If I didn't sell drugs, somebody else would. And I think that they're always available. It's far too easy to get drugs nowadays. Everybody used to take ecstasy at first when it first came out, but nowadays, they're taking a variety of drugs. Ease, acid, speed, jellies, valleys. Some people are even taking cocaine at raves and that.
Right, and how can you tell whether you're getting goodies or baddies or just good gear or bad gear, whatever?
You can, yeah. When you get drugs, some people give you testers, and what a tester is it's an E or something, and you get it, and you ask somebody if they want to try it out, and obviously they try it out and see if it was good or bad. But that doesn't mean that it's got the batch that you've got to beat has got to be good. You could get a bag full of askets,
But not all dodgy deals are just a straightforward con. Drugs have been cut with these ingredients. sometimes with disastrous effects.
We went into the rave and I got a couple of raps of speed over this guy, I don't know who it was, and as soon as I took it, I felt like my mouth all burned. It was like bubbly, like wee bubbles on my tongue, and you usually get something like that anyway, but it was like really bad. And then the buzz came on and things like that, and then about 4 o'clock in the morning I started being really sick. It's like really bad pains in my stomach, and I just ignored it. So I'd just been sick probably because of the speed in that. And then next day the pains were just getting too bad, and my friend was like, right, we have to go to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, got a few tests and that, and what it was, they found traces of asbestos in my system, and what it was the speed must have been mixed to asbestos, and I took that, and that's why I was sick. But this went on for about 3 months or so. I was sick all the time, I was bringing up blood, and it just like got worse the whole time.
Sometimes you can have bad effects by taking too much of a drug.
Well, what I found was when I was taking ecstasy, it was when I started taking too much, you start to get a bit paranoia. Any little thing that goes wrong, you immediately think that people are conspiring against you and plotting against you, because you just imagine the worst. It becomes easier to blame your mates, folk closer to you, for the problems rather than blame the large amount of drugs you're taking. Because when you do take too much, it increases your paranoia.
Some drug users rely on using known dealers or on street gossip to find out what's safe.
Well, basically I would have heard already the vibe about the streets, what's actually happening with the drug. Is it good? Is it going to make you sit on your arse all night? Is it going to sort of make you have a good one or whatever? So basically I'll know before I even take it, but I'll only go on certain people telling me.
But how reliable is this kind of information? As part of our survey, we wanted to find out how much knowledge users had of temazepam or jellies. We asked 3 questions. Were jellies potentially addictive? Did they lower people's inhibitions? Were they dangerous if mixed with other downers or alcohol? 80% got at least one answer wrong. 34% got all 3 answers wrong. This level of ignorance is alarming, but for most young drug users it doesn't register as a major deterrent.
It's like walking through a minefield. An awful lot of people go through a minefield and don't get hurt, and they see the ones that come out the other side of the minefield. What they don't see is what we see, which is the ones that get blown up, you know, that suffer serious damage. And that's what happens with something like ecstasy, for example. I mean, an awful lot of people take ecstasy and don't seem to suffer any bad effects. But we see people who have mega effects and go on having mega effects for ages afterwards.
I don't think the teenagers who use these have got particular information about them at all. They go by the effect the drug produces, by how much it costs, presumably, and whether it's their peer group insists that this is normal behaviour. I suspect very few of them understand the potential complications in a few patients or what the long-term possible effects are. I don't think they've got that sort of information. I haven't got that sort of information. I suspect they've got less than I've got.
But why should a senior medical figure like Dr. Little not have any information on recreational drugs? The fact is that despite all the media hype about ecstasy, hardly any research has been produced on the subject.
There's been a sad, as far as I'm aware anyway, a sad lack of research into these drugs. I mean, we're talking about the last rave we had in this area was supposed to attract 16,500 kids. 16,500 kids for one night in one city in the UK. The potential for ecstasy abuse is absolutely huge in this country.
The numbers of studies of this nature are very limited. It's quite surprising.
Why do you think that is?
It's about the perception of the importance of recreational drug use. I think until recently, the main focus has been on problem drug use.
The official agencies aren't doing anything, basically, because it is illegal. And it'll embarrass a lot of people, you know? It'll embarrass a lot of people high up because of how large the phenomenon is. I mean, nothing like this has ever got so big before. And I mean, I understand it's hard to deal with, you know, for someone for someone in a high position.
Other things come into, like, you know, the politics of their organisations, etc. But the main reason is that they don't want to know what they're going to find out if they start poking about with the issue.
So where do young people get their information on drugs? 35% told us they had no information, 23% used friends, 7% contacted agencies, 2% turned to helplines. One of the few agencies to tackle this problem of information is the Manchester-based Lifeline project. Their harm reduction literature has been around for years.
The response of adults, if they're teachers, has been to wonder precisely how much detail they can go into about drugs. The response of drugs agencies has been trying to struggle to keep up with what young people seem to know about drugs. The response of government departments has invariably been to try and pretend that the rates of use aren't as high as they are. As always, adults, until they figure out precisely what they're going to say to young people, try and disguise their true feelings, I think.
But how long do we have to wait before adults figure out what to say and do? It's now 18 months since the Focal Point special on ecstasy use.
The agencies readily admit the ecstasy phenomenon caught them unawares and unprepared.
So what is their strategy now?
I want to see an effective drug education campaign mounted. I look to this drugs task force to advise me on what is the best way forward and to ensure that we have a proper coordination of all these efforts. I suspect there are considerable efforts which are being made all over Scotland. It may be in the network of activity there are some holes which need to be tidied up. But beyond that, I believe that we ought to be able to draw it all together in a coordinated fashion and attack the problem in a way that will be effective.
Set up in September, the Scottish Drugs Task Force is not scheduled to outline its new strategy until late summer 1994.
Whilst the scale of drug use, of designer drug use, is being revealed almost on a day-to-day basis to be far greater than people ever imagined, we still have to define the extent to which this is an expression of culture on the part of young people and the extent to which it constitutes a social problem that social work can intervene in a constructive way.
Lothian Social Work Department announced in November 1992 that it was to conduct a 5-month research study into recreational drug use. It has still to publish its recommendations.
We hoped that ecstasy would go away. I mean, I think looking back 3 years, 4 years, there was a hope that it would go away. Only it didn't. It's grown. And we can say now, looking back, that it grew up, that it grew, it expanded into all the other recreational drugs, and we now are where we are at now. It's not just Lothian, it's all over the UK, and I think you'd have to say that all over the UK there is a problem that hasn't been arrested, and that, if you like, all services have been slower than they might have been to respond to it. But I won't run away from the fact that we're also having to respond to a huge number of other things, other demands, and one of our tasks as a health board is constantly balancing all of those different things.
The Major Drugs Information Project with young people, funded by the Health Board, is working on a 21-month schedule between research and dissemination of material. The danger, as we see it, is that the drug scene is changing all the time and that newly worked out policies could be out of date before they are even introduced.
I think that the scene is always changing, and this has always been the case, and perhaps up until now service agencies haven't perhaps paid enough attention to what's happening actually out there on the street. They have developed a client group and this has become a tradition. The lesson we can learn perhaps is that we need to keep closer tabs with the actual drug using communities and be constantly aware and looking out for those changes.
Establishing that level of communication can be a problem.
Kids have got certain terminology, they've got a way of speaking, a way of acting, a way of behaving. On some occasions, it's possible that if some of these agencies were to relate better to kids, first of all, I think they'd be able to communicate better. See what I mean?
When you have to learn from the people you're trying to teach, that can be quite difficult and embarrassing. So I think that's one of the problems. But the main problem is getting young people to believe that you have anything of use to say to them at all, which if you haven't is quite taxing.
The problem for us, I mean, remember that we're all middle-aged and none of us have been through this. I mean, this is the other big problem we've got with drug use. With alcohol, we've all been through it, but with drugs, we haven't. It's a new phenomenon. And so you are having to educate us.
The official agencies don't understand that it's a way of life for young people. I mean, I'm not being ageist here, but they're older. They've missed the boat, you know what I mean? It's an older generation. And a lot of them just refuse to listen to young people because they think they've got the wrong idea, they've got the wrong attitude about life, you know?
Professional agencies will be, in many instances, reluctant to take on board a lot of very well-informed young people. After all, it's in their interests to claim expertise as their own domain and not to welcome a lot of better-informed young people on board when that could finally succeed only in threatening their own jobs.
We didn't think there was anything threatening when we produced the Jelly Time leaflet funded by Lothian Health Board. We produced this leaflet because there was lots of jellies going down in the clubs and it was causing some people serious problems.
Right, who's got a tar?
Evening.
No, me.
Couldn't get it, mate.
Oh, fuck. Spam. See if there's any jellies in the house.
Nah, you tit. Try the bathroom cabinet.
Upstairs in the bathroom.
Yes. There's enough downers here to sink a ship. Tam's old dear must be a fucking insomniac.
Meow.
Jelly time!
We distributed more than 10,000 Jelly Time leaflets to shops, clubs and agencies. The letters came flooding in from all over the UK.
I would just like to say, keep up the good work, as it's information no drug user should be without. The leaflets are vital reading material for myself and my club.
I'm very keen to find out more about dance drugs like E, speed and acid, as my friend Jackie takes these on a regular basis and I'm worried about
I
her.
take a lot of barbs, which sound like the jellies you talked about. Only a few of my friends know.
Just in case
My
I get
parents
offered any
don't know.
drugs, I want to know what or what not to take.
Young people found the leaflet really useful, but a memo from the Lothian Health Board revealed that they had serious reservations about it.
It is quite unacceptable for the board to be funding a publication containing the kind of language used in this comic strip. The message in the attached publication is that the use of drugs is enjoyable and acceptable so long as the users follow the advice given. This could even encourage young people to use drugs for the first time.
We wanted to raise some of these issues with Mr. Lusby, but he refused our invitation. Dr. Zealey took his place. We asked if she thought the leaflet encourages drug taking.
From my department, which is a public health department, which has always had to take a rather different view in terms of public health, we don't think it does. But from the board overall, and Mr. Lusby has to speak from the board overall, he is acknowledging the fact that there is a lot of concern amongst a large number of the public that anything that acknowledges the rave scene, the drug scene is there, and talks about it, is effectively accepting it, condoning it, encouraging it. And he has to, Mr. Lusby has to take account of those other views.
Some of those other views condemn the very idea of giving out information on safer drug use. So what do you feel about the literature that's around for harm reduction at the moment?
Well, I can't honestly say that I've read an awful lot of it.
Okay, what about Jelly Time?
About?
Jelly Time, Crew 2000's publication. You had some quite strong views about that.
I had. I was, when it was the press that alerted me to it. I couldn't believe it when I read, you mean the comic bit?
Mm-hmm.
It was absolutely disgusting.
Why?
Well, I don't think there's any need to use language like that to begin with.
suspicion that we're going to have to learn to live with drugs, rather like we've learned to do with alcohol. You know, that alcohol's been around for thousands of years, and we've learned to live with it. And it may well be that has to be our objective, is to actually go for finding ways of educating people so that they can live comfortably alongside the fact that drugs are unlikely to totally disappear.
Alcohol is the single most important contributor to our workload by a long, long way. Acute alcohol abuse causes all the problems in this department in terms of violence, in terms of numbers, in terms of admissions to hospital, and in terms of death from assaults, road traffic accidents. For every one drug misuse, we perhaps see 50 or 100 acute alcohol problems.
The fact that drugs are illegal constrains many adults in working around the issue. It's quite acceptable to talk about sensible drinking. But if you start addressing the audience of this television programme in terms of sensible ecstasy use, you see what kind of response you get.
I would say drug taking on our wavelength, on the rave scene, the E-acid on the vibes, is definitely much better than alcohol, because like before I got into sort of drugs and that, obviously we were all going out, getting drunk, getting into trouble, coming into pubs, reeking, attacking folk. It's just nonsense.
I'm still taking these, I'm still taking drugs because they increase the enjoyment of the night. I've got it down to a level that I enjoy. I find that my nights are much better, you've got something to look forward to, and it's not got the effects that I had before. They're not the be all and end all, but they're not the worst thing in the world.
Why do you think so few people are prepared to speak openly about this?
Maybe a lot of people are in jobs where if they were to speak like this, they would maybe put their jobs on the line or whatever, which is a big problem because the general public that are watching the TV just didn't get a big overall opinion. Maybe it's only people like in my kind of position that can go and speak like this, which is a pity, but that's life, yeah.
Life for many young people means weekend drug taking. But what we found out is that most people in authority who might be able to make drug taking safer just don't want to know. That's because all drugs are lumped together as illegal, except, of course, tobacco and alcohol.
That creates problems for the people in power because it is illegal. They've got to be seen it's wrong, you know. They have to get round that. There's no two ways about it because they're missing the boat each time. They're still talking about ecstasy. Like, that's the main focus. Everybody's taking ecstasy. I know hundreds of people nowadays that don't touch it. But I've moved on to other things.
We are here this week to talk about recreational drugs, and they just wanted to avoid that issue because I think it embarrasses them.
I mean, is it going to be a case of, oh, we'll just wait till there's a mass problem about it before we even think about doing something? It's ridiculous.
If you have a drugs problem or are worried about someone who may be taking drugs, you can call Drugline Scotland on 0800 77 6600 for confidential information and advice. Lines are open between 10 a.m. and 2 a.m. 7 days a week, and extra lines are open now to take your calls. The issues raised in tonight's Focal Point are up for discussion on Eddie Mair Live tomorrow morning on BBC Radio Scotland. Gary Robertson will be taking your calls, and the number to dial is 041 338 6161. That's Eddie Mair Live on Radio Scotland tomorrow morning from 8:30 till 10 o'clock.